There is a specific moment, not a day, not a month, a moment, when you open your bank account, and instead of the familiar cold wave of dread hitting your chest, you feel nothing. Not relief exactly, not joy, just nothing. And that nothing, that quiet, unremarkable nothing, is one of the most profound financial experiences a person can have, because it means money has stopped feeling like a threat. And that shift, that single psychological shift, changes absolutely everything that comes after it. Most financial content will tell you the magic number is $1 million, or 6 figures, or whatever impressive round number makes for a good thumbnail. But the number that actually changes your life is smaller than you think, much smaller. And the reason nobody talks about it is because it does not sound impressive enough to build a brand around. The number is $10,000, not 1 million, not 100,000, 10. Stay with me. Because what happens in your brain at $10,000 has nothing to do with mathematics, and everything to do with the kind of person you are able to become once money stops consuming your mind. Let me tell you about a man named Calvin. Calvin is 29 years old. He works as a junior account manager at a marketing firm. Not a bad job. Not a great one. The kind of job that pays enough to survive and not enough to breathe. Calvin knows about money. He has read the books, watched the videos, understands compound interest, knows he should be investing. But every month, without fail, Calvin arrives at the 25th with almost nothing left. Not because he is reckless, not because he buys expensive things, because his financial life is a game he is always playing on the hardest difficulty setting. Every decision Calvin makes, every single one, is made from scarcity. Should he take the freelance project that pays more but requires working weekends? He has to say yes, because he needs the money. Should he push back when his manager gives him work that is clearly above his pay grade without any additional compensation? He cannot. He needs the job. Should he turn down the invitation to attend an industry event that could open real career doors? He has to. He cannot justify the cost. Calvin is not making financial decisions. Calvin is making survival decisions. And there is a difference that will determine the entire trajectory of his life. Here is something most people never understand about financial struggle. It is not primarily a money problem. It is a mental bandwidth problem. When you do not have financial stability, when the account is always low, when unexpected expenses are always catastrophic, when the margin between what you earn and what you need is razor thin, your brain enters a state that psychologists have studied extensively. They call it the scarcity mindset. And what scarcity does to the brain is not what most people expect. It does not make you more creative. It does not sharpen your focus. It tunnels it. Research from Princeton and Harvard published in the journal Science showed that financial scarcity consumes the equivalent of 13 IQ points of cognitive bandwidth. 13 points. That is the difference between a good night's sleep and being completely sleep-deprived. Every day. Not because you are less intelligent, because your brain is running a background program that never closes. It is constantly calculating, constantly monitoring, constantly managing the gap between what you have and what you need. And while that program runs, the rest of your thinking suffers. Your creativity suffers. Your long-term planning suffers. Your ability to see opportunity suffers. You are not broke because you cannot think clearly. You cannot think clearly because you are broke. And that distinction is everything. Calvin hit a wall. Not the dramatic kind. Not a crisis. The quiet kind. The kind where you sit in your car after work for 20 minutes because going inside the apartment means looking at your phone and possibly opening the banking app, and you are not ready for that tonight. That kind of wall. He was not failing by any conventional measure. He was paying his bills, showing up to work, being responsible. But responsible and building are two different things. And Calvin knew somewhere in the part of himself he did not examine too often, that he was spending all of his energy maintaining a life that was not really going anywhere. He made a decision that night sitting in the car, not a dramatic one, just a decision. He was going to find $10,000, not borrow it, not wish for it, find it, in his existing life, by changing how he moved through every month until it accumulated. He did not know then what $10,000 would actually do to him. He thought it was a financial goal. It was not. It was an identity transformation wrapped inside a number. The first thing that changes at $10,000 is not what you think. It is not the investment returns. It is not the emergency fund security. It is the weight. There is a specific psychological weight that comes with financial vulnerability that you carry so constantly for so long that you stop noticing it is there. You adapt to it the way you adapt to a noise in your apartment that you hear every night. At first it bothers you. Then you stop noticing, but it is still there. Still consuming energy, still affecting your sleep in ways you cannot name, still shaping your mood in the morning before you have a conscious thought. When you cross the $10,000 threshold, that weight lifts. Not all at once, gradually, over weeks, and the first time you realize it is gone is not when you check your account. It is when you wake up one morning and there is nothing pressing on your chest. And you have to think for a moment about why. And then you realize, you are not afraid today. Not about money, not this morning. That feeling the first morning you wake up, genuinely unafraid of your finances, is worth more than any return on investment. Because it is the morning, your brain finally has room to think about something other than survival. Now let me show you what the mathematics actually looks like. Because here is where it gets genuinely exciting. Say you are saving $500 a month, investing it consistently into a broad market index fund, earning an average annual return of 8%. Getting to your first $10,000 takes approximately 19 months. 19 months of showing up, choosing differently, saying no to things, staying the course when it is not exciting. That is real. That is hard. And most people give up before they get there. But here is what changes at month 20. Your second $10,000 does not take 19 months. It takes 17. Not because you changed anything you are doing, because the $10,000 you already have is now working alongside you. It is earning returns, generating growth, moving in the background while you sleep. By the time you are building your third $10,000, the timeline shrinks again, and then something almost absurd happens. Once your portfolio reaches $250,000, earning that same 8%, your investments generate $20,000 in a single year on their own, $40 every single day, while you are watching television, while you are at work, while you sleep. The money is working, and you are doing nothing additional to make it happen. This is not a trick. This is not exclusive to wealthy people with access to secret investments. This is arithmetic. Simple arithmetic that compounds quietly in the background of your life if you build the foundation to start it. And the foundation starts at 10,000. Here is what nobody tells you about reaching your first financial milestone. The milestone does not just change your bank account. It changes your calendar. When Calvin finally crossed $10,000, it took him 22 months of very deliberate living. Something happened at work that had never happened before. His company announced they were looking for someone to lead a new client project. More responsibility. More visibility. A step towards something real. The old Calvin would have stayed quiet. Not from lack of ability, from lack of security. The old Calvin needed his job more than his job needed him. And in any negotiation, the person who needs it more always loses. But this Calvin raised his hand. This Calvin put himself forward. And when his manager suggested the additional responsibilities might come with a modest increase, Calvin said that was not quite enough, and named his actual number. Something he had never done in 3 years at the company. He got it. Not all of it. Most of it. And the reason he asked, the reason he was able to ask, had nothing to do with suddenly developing confidence from the sky. It had everything to do with $10,000 sitting in an investment account. Because $10,000 is walking away money. Not forever walk away money. Not quit and travel money. Just enough months of survival to make the possibility of leaving real. And when leaving is a real possibility rather than a fantasy, the conversation changes. You change. There is a concept in behavioral economics called the scarcity trap. When resources are scarce, time, money, attention, the mind fixates on the scarcity so completely that it becomes almost impossible to see beyond it. The trap works like this. When you are focused entirely on not drowning, you cannot think about learning to swim. When you are focused entirely on the immediate problem, you cannot see the systemic pattern creating the problems. When you are focused entirely on surviving this month, you cannot design next year. The scarcity trap is not a character flaw. It is a cognitive response to genuine pressure. But it has a cost. Every decision made from inside the trap is a shorter, smaller, more reactive decision than the one you would make from outside it. The job you take because you cannot afford to wait for a better one. The apartment you stay in because moving feels too risky. The relationship you stay in because the financial entanglement feels impossible to unravel. The business idea you dismiss because the timing is never right. The scarcity trap costs you not just money, it costs you options. And options are the currency that really matters. $10,000 does not buy you everything, but it buys you enough options to begin escaping the trap. Enough to pause before a bad decision. Enough to say no to something wrong while waiting for something right. Enough to negotiate instead of beg. Enough to choose instead of react. Calvin bought a car 2 years before his 10,000 milestone. He did what most people do. He walked into a dealership knowing roughly what he could afford in monthly payments. $23,000 car. $380 a month. Not extravagant. Sensible even. But here is what the monthly payment framing cost him. He never once thought about the full cost. The interest. The insurance increase. The depreciation the moment he drove it off the lot. The opportunity cost of what those payments could have become over a decade. $380 a month for 6 years is $27,000 in payments. On a car that was worth $14,000 by the time it was paid off, put that same $380 a month into an index fund over the same 6 years at 8% annual returns. It becomes $35,000. Not $27,000 in payments on a depreciating asset, $35,000 in compounding wealth. That is not a small difference. That is the foundation of a different financial life. Calvin understood this only after crossing 10,000. Not because he suddenly became smarter, because his brain finally had enough room to think past the next month. The scarcity trap had been filtering out this information for years. It was available to him the whole time. He just could not see it. Here is the shift that happens to your relationship with spending after $10,000. And this one will probably surprise you. You stop worrying about small expenses. Not because you become careless, because you develop a sense of proportion that you simply cannot access from inside financial scarcity. When every dollar feels precious, when the account is always low, your mind cannot easily distinguish between the purchase that genuinely threatens your financial future and the one that is simply annoying. The $3 coffee and the $30,000 car occupy similar emotional space. Both feel like threats. Both trigger the same anxious calculation. But they are not the same. Not even close. The coffee is irrelevant. The car changes your life. After 10,000, after the weight lifts, you stop spending mental energy on the coffee. And you start spending it on the car, on the apartment, on the salary, on the investments, on the decisions that actually move the needle. This is not a small shift. This is the difference between someone who agonizes over a menu for 15 minutes, trying to find the cheapest option, and someone who orders what they want and spends that same 15 minutes thinking about how to increase their income. Both are trying to build wealth. Only one of them is using their mental energy on something that will actually work. Here is what I need you to understand about $10,000. It is not the destination. It is the door. Everything you build after it. The investments, the career moves, the business decisions, the opportunities you can say yes to. All of it is made possible by what happens to your brain the moment you cross that threshold. Calvin is 32 now. He crossed 10,000 at 29. In 3 years, through a combination of continued saving, 2 meaningful salary increases he negotiated from a position of security, and the compounding of his investments, he has $41,000. He did not find a secret investment. He did not start a side business that went viral. He did not win anything. He simply crossed the first threshold, built the habit and the identity that comes with it, and let the mathematics do what mathematics does when you give it time and consistency. The first 10,000 was the hardest thing he ever did financially. Everything after it has been progressively easier, not because he became a different person, because he became the person the first 10,000 required him to be. And that person makes better decisions, sees more clearly, moves more confidently, earns more, builds more, every single month. So let me ask you something directly. Where are you right now? Not in terms of what you wish you had, in terms of what you actually have. And more importantly, where is your brain right now? Is it running the scarcity program? Is it tunneled? Is it spending cognitive energy on problems that are urgent but not important, while the important decisions go unmade? Because if it is, the answer is not more information. The answer is not a better budget. The answer is not a new strategy, or a different investment, or a side hustle you will be too exhausted to maintain. The answer is $10,000. Saved, invested, protected, left alone to compound. Not spent when the right thing comes along. Not dipped into when the right opportunity appears. Just held, until your brain crosses the threshold. Until the weight lifts. Until you wake up one morning and feel nothing about your finances. And then feel everything about your future. Classy wealth exists for exactly this moment. The moment someone stops consuming financial content and starts actually understanding what drives financial outcomes. Not the strategies. Not the tips. The psychology. The identity. The invisible thresholds that separate the people who stay stuck from the people who quietly, consistently build something real. Subscribe, because the next video is going to challenge something most people believe about how long it actually takes to build wealth. Specifically, there is a number of years that most financial advice assumes you need, and it is significantly longer than what is actually required if you understand something most people never figure out. That video is coming, and if you are serious about building wealth in the time you actually have, you cannot afford to miss it. Until then, find your 10,000. Start today, not when the timing is perfect, not when the income is higher, not when life settles down. Today. Because the brain you will have on the other side of that number is the brain that builds everything else.